moderating this whole thing all today.
On the ground or up here?
I would say up here. This is good for me, if it's good for you.
Can everybody see? Okay.
I think everybody can see. Can everybody see okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so the girl, boy, girl. All right. And I did want to just let you guys know that these people are here and ready to talk to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Heather Langenkamp. Tommy Hudson. And we're going to be passing the mic back and forth, old school style. So.
I mean, we can talk loud enough. I don't think we need a mic.
Oh, mics are fun.
Oh, he wants a mic. I can see the cameraman.
Yeah, he's like, not what she said. What he said.
We're going to get comfy here so we'll share. All right, so how are you guys doing so far? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Good?
I'm getting a phone call.
Heather's blowing out. Is this your daughter?
Rude. That was my brother.
Oh, tell him we said hi.
Daniel B. Langenkamp.
Have everybody say hi to him.
No.
That would be
I'll turn this off.
You sure?
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Hey, well, it's cool with us if you want to talk to your brother. But, starting off, I just want to ask the both of you. While making the movie, Nightmare on Elm Street, first did either of you think that it was going to be nearly as big as it is today?
Don't start.
You know what? No, I didn't. It's not because I didn't think it was a good movie. I just didn't know. I think also when you're making a movie, it's hard to have perspective about what's going to happen in the future with it and how it's going to turn out. So I didn't. And in hindsight, when I look at what we were doing while we were doing it, it's obvious. But I just, I was young and I didn't know. I'm very glad it has become what it has become. And certainly the best indicator for the longevity that the movie has enjoyed is that it was an amazing script directed by a genius, and he also has an uncanny eye for casting, so all the elements were there to have a really successful film. So, but I I missed the whole thing.
As you can tell, yeah, I'm not going to use the mic. What I think too is that Bob Shea, who was the producer of the movie, he was such a scrapper, and if you see Never Sleep Again, you kind of hear his story of how he had faith in Wes Craven and gave him the money to make the movie. And he's actually, I think, the reason why the movie became so successful. He just had this very new way of looking at films. The idea of the sequel was kind of his idea. And at the end of filming, he's the one who said, let's do some multiple endings in case we want to make another one, which, of course, was brand new, that idea of having a sequel. So Bob, I think, also is a really, we didn't know him very well. He was just like the scary producer in the corner, telling us to work faster. But now that I've gotten to know him and just seen how he made New Line Cinema, that was him. Yeah, I think he has a lot of credit to bear for that.
Yeah. Yes, and actually, everything Heather says is so true and correct in that so much of any movie's success is the team that pushes it through post-production and out into the audience. And so, you can have the most amazing film ever made, and if there isn't anyone like Bob Shea championing it, it can just die in a vault somewhere, which I'm sure there's a vault filled with movies
Well, and you guys watch a lot of movies that don't get released in the theaters. I mean, the horror movies. And sometimes I'm sure you go, wow, that movie is so good. Why didn't nobody ever hear about that movie? And a lot of it is the producers. And okay, we'll switch, Tommy.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, we'll all slide down one.
Okay, here. No. I'm just gonna switch your hand because me and Mandy will probably be talking a lot. And so anyway, that's that question. Next.
All that.
I'm tired of that question.
All right, well, here's another question. I'm sure you'll tire of that. So, doing your documentary, I Am Nancy, I know you talked to Wes's daughter about casting. And speaking of casting, Johnny Depp, apparently his daughter was pretty much the one that said, him, he's the one. So, I mean, how was it? Was it awkward for, well, anything awkward with Johnny? Any dirty secrets we can hear about?
It wouldn't be a secret then.
You can tell us. It's okay.
Let's see, Johnny's secrets. He's probably, like, even though he was like a rocker guitar player, to me it was such a pure person. I didn't think he probably had dark secrets, but if you saw him, and if you see the picture that's on my table of him as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old boy, young man, I mean, he's really dreamy, and I don't think he has an evil, mean bone in his body. There's no secrets, I don't think. I mean, I can't imagine if there were. I don't know any.
I didn't have any.
It's so boring, but that's true.
All right, well, what about secrets if you guys are going? Fair enough, fair enough. Now, Tommy, I did want to ask, you're doing this amazing documentary. I mean, you sold out already, didn't you?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, which, to sell out on a Friday, kudos, I'll say that. But, talking about writing a documentary like this, just one of the biggest horror franchises ever. How long did it take you to coordinate all the interviews and just get everybody together and just edit everything? Because I mean, it's what, like a 4-hour documentary?
Yeah, it's 4 hours.
Sure.
Okay, the documentary is 4 hours. It covers every movie and the TV series, and there's 4 hours of bonus features where we explore a bunch of other things. The documentary took 9 months. I always say it's like my baby. And it came about, Heather and I had known each other for a very long time, and we had talked about, doing these conventions and how there's all these really great stories to tell, and we should just get together and do it. And then I got a call from a friend of mine, Dan, who I'd done, his name was Jason with, which was a documentary on Friday the 13th. And it just kind of snowballed into everything, and Heather was wonderful enough to be our godmother and executive producer and help make calls and shepherd the whole project and, do such a great job helping narrate. It just, it took a long time, but I thought it was really worth it. I thought we really explored the franchise in a way that had never been done before, and certainly in a way that New Line wasn't really ever going to do or aware of.
I don't think they were even aware of the amount of information that this documentary would bring to the world.
Yeah.
And I know Bob Shea was very touched by the honor that the actual movie kind of gives him as this creator and important creative force behind the movies, which is always thought is all the director and all the actors, like I said earlier.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, bringing up of Bob Shea, I mean, he really is a visionary. He really is a genius. And, one of the things we wanted to do in Never Sleep Again was not just go, hey, let's look at the movies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. It was, they say it's a company that Freddie built, but I mean, it's really so much more. But Freddie is a big part of New Line Cinema. And what Bob Shea wanted to do, and he had the vision to say, this is something that could be gigantic. Let's take it, but let's not just roll around in money. Let's make everyone better. Let's make everyone different and really exciting. And I'm really glad that we got to tell that story. And if you watch the movie, if you watch Never Sleep Again, at the end, Bob Shea kind of starts to tear up because he really, I think, knows what this franchise and what, people like Heather and Amanda and everyone who brought something to it, what they meant and how they built something together, which, hasn't really been equaled in a franchise since. I mean, you have your Saws and everything like that, but I don't know, like Freddie and Nancy and Tina, they're icons.
Yeah, it's iconic. And, well, just to follow up on that with you real quick. 8 hours of documentary. What ended up on the editing room floor?
I know so much.
Oh my God. I think I have over 2,000 pages of transcripts, I think. Oh, I mean, it's just never ending. I mean, I joke, I called the show Never Gonna End. Because it just kept going and going and
And Dan would bring to the interviews, because Mandy and I did the interviews for the show, a 20-page sheet of papers, in questions, and I told him, I said, you can't ask a question that's ever been asked before. Of course, it's impossible, but he did a pretty good job.
He did. I mean, I wrote all the questions, I did all the research and stuff, and I definitely tried to think of what do we not know. I mean, there are certain things, I don't know if you answered this, I think you might have, that ended up on the cutting room floor, but for instance, you hated that pink sweater or whatever you were wearing in part 3. It was like a pink sweater with pearls. Like,
and you got giant shoulder pads, so ready. Too bad, could have stabbed me in the shoulder pads. But
you would have lived.
I would have lived.
I mean, those things were like armor. I mean, there's so much, and then you have to make a decision. I mean, I vividly remember we were driving in Griffith Park, and I was on the phone, and Dan goes, I just don't think we can do this thing in 2 hours, and maybe we go to 3, and then we go, we have to go to 4, but I mean, how much farther do we go? And not to, total sidebar, but Crystal Lake Memories, my new show, is 6.5 hours. Because you just realize you just can keep telling and telling. But with Nightmare, there comes a point where there's so much that's known. I mean, we have hundreds of hours of stuff that we didn't put in. I mean, your interview was 2 days. Her interview was 2 days. I think you interviewed for a total of 5 hours, 6 hours. I mean, you just can't put it all in. So, but we tried.
Well, Heather, I mean, I know you're not a huge fan of horror movies, correct?
Not too big of a fan.
Not too big of a fan.
Like, I haven't seen The Conjuring yet, and I'm mad at myself because I do want to see that one. But I don't rush out to see them because I wait till they're 10 or 15 years old.
You just let them become.
Let them
if
become
they last,
classics.
then,
If they last and people are still talking about them, I'll see them.
then it's worth it.
What about The Conjuring? Is it?
I want to see it.
Yeah, but
it's on my list, and I probably won't see it for 5 years.
What's the appeal of
but
it?
it's so scary. It's
I
like
hear.
the scariest scary. Like people that like scary say it's too scary.
Well, the funny story about that is that in my town, the writer of that movie, writers, they're actually Chad and Carrie Hayes. They're not neighbors, but I know them quite well. And his wife and I were on the PTA together. And he was actually on the PTA. These guys are so great. Like, they're super active in the community, and their kids are all, athletes. And so when I heard that they had written it, I was like, oh no. And then it's supposed to be so fantastic. So that's why I even higher on my list than it normally would be, because I know I'm going to run into him in the market, and I'm going to be like, I haven't seen the movie yet.
You have to wait like 2-3 years.
Yeah,
probably 2 years is what it is.
Well, Nina, what about you? Are you a horror fan, or kind of like a?
Well, it's not that I'm not a fan. I'm just a coward. Like I scare so easily that I think. God, what was a movie I saw? It was like a romantic comedy, and it had a scary thing in it. And I was like, this is too scary. So I'm not really. But then on a weird thing is that this is how I watch scary stuff. I love The Walking Dead. But my boyfriend laughs at how I watch it, is that I record it, and then I watch it almost all on fast forward. And I tell him how much I love it, because I totally love it.
And you don't hear the dialogue either.
I know, well, I'll stop if I see people talking. I'll be like, okay, I got that. And then I'll fast forward because everybody's always dying. And so I love The Walking Dead, and I give it as much attention as I can. But
thank God for fast forward.
I love fast forward.
I'm the exact same way.
Yeah, and so it's like I completely appreciate the art form, and as we've made them, they're really, they're hard to make.
They're intricate.
And it's hard to stay in that peaked state of fear and anxiety and all that. And I really like when I watch them, I'm like, people are working so hard, and I'm really sorry, but I have to fast forward. So I feel bad. So I don't go to the movie theaters that much because they won't let me fast forward.
Well, I will say a funny story. We were just in New Orleans at a show, and we had this beautiful haunted house.
Oh, it was the best haunted house I think ever
really
made.
incredible. I mean, it was it took us like 25 minutes.
100,000 square feet
it was
of
incredible.
haunted house. It was
and everyone knows Heather from her work and how she can portray terrified and everything. But I personally had never even seen her in real life, and she did very well. You did very well.
Better than you.
Better.
I won't go any farther than that. But I think I handled the scares.
You did.
Because I actually did say to myself, how would Nancy do this?
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's good.
There was a few moments that got you though.
Yeah,
it was
course.
a good haunted
They
house.
jumped out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah. You know what? My sister has been trying to get me to do one of those zombie runs. And I was like, okay, it's hard enough to run a race. Like, I don't want to run a race like I really think I might die in. So I might end up doing
You just have to run faster than the last guy in line.
It's like a race for the haunted house. Like, all these people are jumping out out at you, and if the zombie
I think the
gets
physical
you,
fitness thing has just gone too far.
If you need zombies to get you to go on the treadmill, that's a real problem.
Whatever works.
LA Fitness now has zombies at the back of all the treadmills. You ride that night.
You could do horror fitness, where like you can choose. I want to be chased by zombies or Freddy or Jason.
And it's on a screen behind you, and he's like,
Oh my God! And in the pools, like at the YMCA, it's like, do you want to be chased by a shark? By Freddy? Oh my God! This is like a whole thing. That would be so.
You heard it here first.
I'm calling dibs.
Oh, I love that idea. So you just.
Heather, talking about going through the haunted house and just kind of what would Nancy do?
Right.
She's such a strong female character. When you were reading the script, I mean, did you realize how strong a female character that Nancy was? I mean, because up to that point in the genre, there really wasn't any female that lived past taking a bra off.
Right.
So.
Well, she lived because she did not take.
I'm trying to think.
Exactly.
That's why.
When I came to Hollywood, I think it was kind of the beginning of this whole movement towards stronger women characters. Because remember, like, what was it called, Football Princess or whatever, with Helen Hunt. What was it called? Like, football something. Anyway, so the first part I ever auditioned for was like probably a bunch of movies. There was 16 Candles. There was Quarterback Princess. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
All these had these girls who were super kick-ass in it, and then it was just a time when those parts were just everywhere in Hollywood, I found, and a lot of them I was auditioning for. And I just had played a role in a movie called Nickel Mountain where I'm kind of tough in that, where my boyfriend gets me pregnant and then his dad wants to pay me to have an abortion, and I go, no way. And then I end up marrying a much older man who I love, but who is gonna take care of me. And that movie too had this attitude of, don't tell me what to do, kind of, I'm gonna live the life I want to live. And I just found that the 82 through 89 period, this was a new wave. And everyone's always like, oh, you're a final girl and everything. But if you actually look at the movies, they're all girls like that. I mean, it's a very common theme. So I didn't feel like Nancy was that much different from Quarterback Princess, actually. I mean, in certain ways, I'm like, oh yeah, she's tough. She's going to handle all these problems.
Oh, horror.
And it was a horror movie, yeah, which I'd never done before. So I don't think that in some ways Nancy is that special. There's a lot of that going on in the 80s. You just have to kind of look for it.
One of your buried treasure movies?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking of kind of being hardcore, a little bit more hardcore on the death side, but you got like the most major death scene in the film. What was it like to film? I mean, how difficult was it? How strenuous was it for you? How many acrobatic?
How many zombies had to chase you?
Get up to that set.
How many zombies at curves did it take to get
Oh my God, that's the best. Can you imagine zombies at curves? That makes me so happy. Okay, that scene was, there were so many elements. First of all, it was that big soundstage. It was
so scary.
This huge, tall soundstage that they built this room in that was literally built on
Like Connects. It looked like something like your kid would build with his Connect set.
Yeah.
Sounds scary.
It was really dangerous.
Yeah, and it like had like a crank on the outside, and it was literally, they built this room in this huge soundstage, and everything in the room was nailed down, glued down, shellacked. Nothing in this room moved, and the camera was strapped. They were like airplane seats.
Yeah, they had like an airplane seat with seat belts, like harnesses for the cameramen,
so that perspective always stayed in the same place. And I remember walking in there, and Wes showed me the room, and I peeked my head in. I'm like, that's cool. And
I think I was.
There?
Yeah, I remember hearing your scream.
And so it was just really interesting. So basically, like the crew, there was a ladder outside the room, and everybody crawled in because it was above ground, so it could spin around. And I think, now this might just be in my pay attention. But weren't there just crew guys out there making it? They were like
I don't remember
literally.
the crank. I think they had to actually physically
pushed
walk
Oh,
it
they
up.
literally walked it up. Yeah, it was like physically moved by
By
human,
crew,
crew power. And I remember that we rehearsed it, and I was always on the floor, and the room itself spun, and it was based on a prototype from a Gene Kelly movie or Fred Astaire.
Yeah, it was
Singing in the Rain. No, yeah.
Royal Wedding.
The American in Paris.
American.
Royal Wedding.
The Fred Astaire scene
Thank
where
you.
Fred Astaire's dancing with a hat.
Yeah, and so it's built on that prototype of the room spinning around. So I was always on the floor or on the ground. And the camera always stayed in the same angle, and I just crawled.
To make, like when he said it, he would go, "Okay, you're on the ceiling now."
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, "Okay, flat on your back."
Yeah,
or whatever.
it was totally, yeah, it was like so bizarre. And so like, and then it was like, don't look like you're crawling. You have to look like you're being dragged. It was like also like that was my most important acting was that I made it look like I wasn't crawling. And nobody ever really notices that, but that was hard.
But all those moves were done in this, orientation on the ground.
Yeah.
But that's why she's so incredible because she looks like she's being flung, and then she looks like she's being dragged, and then she looks like she's being like leapt up in certain places.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really difficult.
It was really interesting, and in a way it was kind of fun, and Wes would be like, no, this is happening, and I would do it, and then there was like one move too far, and I got vertigo, and I freaked out, and I thought I was falling, and I literally like panicked and started like crying like a baby, and like freaked out until they had to stop, and like Wes poked his head up through the floor, and he's like, look, there's my head, I'm standing on the ground.
Yeah, he was all the way like talking her down.
Because I was so upset.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm falling. And like I just kept saying that like a crazy person. And he's like, you're really not falling. And I was like,
You're on the
okay.
floor. You're on the floor.
He's like, so I was like, you need to pull it together.
And a movie today, that scene, they probably would give 2 or 3 days to that
Yeah.
scene. And they'd have a stunt woman, of course, do a whole day with her. And then they'd have, so this was like 4 hours, I think.
Yeah, we did that so fast.
Everything was done in a super fast pace.
Yeah, it was really fun. And so Wes was like, we just need to get this, and you need to keep your head in the game because they could
don't
only
have a lot of time.
they could only introduce the blood once. Like that was it. Like once that blood was introduced, that was available.
You could never go again. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. The
There's a lot
hardest
of
thing
pressure.
about horror movies, the hardest thing is that once they introduce blood into the scene, once you introduce blood into the scene, you can never go back. You can never reshoot an earlier scene with no blood. You can never. So, we got 1 or 2 takes.
Yeah.
Because there was this constant timeline that's all about the blood and not about the acting. So.
Oh, totally. It was not about acting. It was like more blood, less blood, more blood, bring in more blood, cold blood. Blood needs to be red or black or brown or more blood, less blood. Man, get out of the way of the blood. We need more blood. Like that was most of the scene. And it was just like, it was all just like blood. And it's like, it's just crazy, and that's how it was. So I just remember, so anyway, that scene, like, we're doing it, it's great, I freak out, I unfreak out. We go back, and Wes is like, you just gotta get it right, because once we get the blood in there, we can't unring that bell. And I was like, no pressure, okay, I've already gone crazy, I have vertigo. But then in the end, like, it all came together, and we did all these cool shots with Freddie, like, between my legs, pulling, and just all this stuff, and it all worked out, and it turned out to be this amazing, and afterwards, that was awesome. Like, I acted
Were you
like
proud? Were you proud
I was
when
so
you saw it?
proud. I was so proud, and even when I got done filming it, I was like, I was smart enough to realize that was something that was like a challenge that I probably wouldn't have to, I wouldn't get to meet again.
Were you smart enough to ask for stunt pay?
No.
I think they would have laughed at it. At that point, they would have just been, "You're fired.
Yeah.
you cry too much. You're fired."
I just want to say something. If you watch that scene again, and something you guys brought up, they did all these things so fast. And if you watch that first movie, considering it was done so quickly, all the incredible things that they did. I mean, that scene, I'm pretty sure, is the first time on film that there are 2 planes of view at the same time, with Rod looking and the outside being there as well. That had never been done on film before. People were literally, how are they doing the scene? Because you always see it completely enclosed, so you're cheating it the whole time, but you see the outside. Like, they were taping bushes to the outside of the set, and then, the scene where you are in the mirror and Freddie jumps through, that's the first time on film that someone crashes through a reflected image. And it's like I think you guys did that once.
Yeah,
because
one
the
day.
mirrors broke. They had 3 mirrors
And actually,
in 2
that was a
rows.
stunt woman who actually sat for that candy glass mirror. And then getting a camera and a mirror and a person together is very complicated. And
But it's like, just talking about these scenes, I mean, you really learn to appreciate what Wes and everyone in that movie did, because you guys did it so fast and so well, and it really broke ground. I mean, it's just fascinating.
Fascinating. I love that. Fascinating.
We just sit up here and fascinate ourselves.
Well, that's the 8 o'clock show, folks.
That's the fascinating.
But, talking about how fascinating things are with this, before you two got introduced to the world of conventions, how aware were you of the, let's hope that I pronounce this really correctly, iconography of Nightmare on Elm Street series? Well played indeed. Were you aware very much of just how big and intense the series took off? Or was it not until you started to go to conventions to just see all of this memorabilia and just all of these things that people create in reference to the film? Were you aware of that stuff?
I'll just briefly, like, in a small way, there's been times when Heather and I have been together and we've had things happen, and I was like, wow, people, like, I'd be surprised if it would be years later after the movie, and they'd be like, oh, you guys are together. But my first convention is really when I was blown away. I was like, oh, it means something.
How long ago? It was like 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10 years ago. Yeah.
I mean, I think the only convention that used to be was Fangoria in New York. I mean, there was really Fangoria, now Creation Entertainment. They're the ones who put on the first convention. And I remember it was at the Mayflower Hotel in New York City. And I had my daughter, so 1994, 91,
It was earlier than that.
it was. Yeah, but we didn't have that many conventions back then. So it was like in the early 90s, the first convention I went to. And it was nice. I mean, it was exciting. But what you speak of was not that strong yet. I mean, it really, I view it as the strengthening. I'd say it's the third generation. It's like the first kids who saw it, they didn't buy a lot of stuff. And then it was like their next introduction at like Nightmare 3 when they started buying stuff. And it's when New Line started marketing all this stuff. There was no marketing. There was nothing to buy for Nightmare 1 or 2. You couldn't go to a store and get a T-shirt. You couldn't even buy a Freddy glove back then. So then Nightmare 3 happens, and they ended up licensing. It's another Bob Shea brilliant move. They licensed literally every single thing possible for Freddy. Music, gloves, toys, games, coffee cups. I mean, literally they must have sold licenses around the world for Freddy, and that's why they made so much money. I mean, that's why New Line Cinema became this huge mega corporation. It's just their licensing of Freddy. And then the conventions did start. I'd say like later in the mid '90s, they really became very popular. And then I noticed, as you'll see if you watch my DVD, it's all about Freddy. I mean, I probably did 1/10 of the business of Freddy back then, maybe not even that some days. It was very quiet at my table. And that's when I got mad and made I Am Nancy, because I just felt like, what are we? As my favorite Rugrats line is, chopped slivers? It's like, why are we not getting any attention? And so that's why it was tongue-in-cheek, but that attitude actually was how I began thinking about Nancy more seriously. And now, lots of groups are holding conventions, and I think we've almost reached a saturation point, because now there's almost 2 a weekend, which what I'm noticing is there's still a lot of fans, but in the old days it used to be much more concentrated. At Cherry Hill, Monster Mania, people would be outside around the building to get in. That was bad. And now, a lot of the smaller towns are having to cancel their conventions because they're not getting enough ticket sales in advance. So I don't know. I kind of feel like in the next year we're going to see it like cutting back. It's just gotten really. I could pick any weekend of the year and find a convention somewhere in America to go to. So it's great for fans, but I don't know how, as a business model, it does. I don't know.
I mean, I just remember the first time we did one. I remember, you had done the Fangoria. I think it was probably to promote Your Nightmare, maybe, right? Something like that. And Fangoria was doing another one, and you were like, oh, well, I did one of those. I mean, maybe that would be fun. And, we made a call, and we did it. And I certainly had no idea this world existed.
Yeah, that was Monster Mania.
Yeah, there was lines out the door, down the hall, down the steps, out the building, and
yeah, that was a really great.
it was great.
That's the first one.
That was the first, yeah.
Yeah, you did it.
Oh my
like that
God!
too.
I remember I was just like, whoa, what?
Yeah. I mean, so you really, I mean, it has
It was
grown.
amazing. It was like.
It
That
just
was
has grown so
in the
exponentially.
I'd say it's been the last 10 years. It's gone so big, such a big business.
Well, just keeping on the concept of horror conventions, I mean, initially, from the documentary, from what you said, it was all Freddy. It was all Freddy, and you were like, well, where's the Nancy stuff? Come on! It's taken off quite a bit, and this is something I'm not sure if you're really aware of or not, but as far as like the female characters in horror movies, you're one of the few people that people actually cosplay as.
Yep.
I mean,
I
how
have
does
my
that?
cosplayer here today, Deandra Lazor.
Oh, hi, Deandra. I didn't notice.
What's
that.
your last name? Laser.
Laser.
Laser. I say Lazor because it's more romantic.
That sounds great.
Laser.
But I'm going to interrupt. We now have an Amanda Weiss.
Oh yeah, and so
Michelle Hansen dressed up so awesome in the body bag today. I was overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God, somebody dressed up like me.
It was very cool, by the way.
Yeah.
But, again, on the whole convention front, have either of you gotten anything like really weird or strange that somebody's made for you or asked you to autograph or maybe bounced ideas off of you like, well, what happened after the convertible top came up and it's red and green? And
I'm not
how
going to
Nancy
go
show
there.
up in the third
You don't
one?
want to know.
I do really want to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
No, I mean, I'm not going to say because actually, I think in any population, you have certain people who have trouble distinguishing reality from fiction. I meet them all the time in this role I play here, And so I've had some really kind of poignant / interesting, maybe even scary, like fans who they don't understand that there's not a Freddy in the world. I mean, and to me, it's hard to like. Do I humor them and agree like yes, I'm so scared of Freddy, or do I try to like be their therapist for 4 minutes and say there's really no Freddy out there, and it's to me that's the hardest part is because I realize that we need to pay much more attention to some folks out there who do have issues, mental health issues, or and these kinds of movies become like touchstones for some people who do have mental health issues, and so I think of all the fans that I meet, the ones that I'm most troubled by is the fact that I can't help some of these folks who really do struggle with like paranoid ideas about Freddy or Nancy or and we've had a couple of fans who really we just felt so helpless and scared, scared for them, scared for us, scared for the future of the planet. And I just hope that if anybody of you knows people like that, like really try to help them. And I don't know what you can do for them, but I do think that it's not something you can live with for your whole life. Eventually, it will eat you alive.
Well, on the flip side of that, though, you've mentioned this, and I am Nancy. On the flip side of that, people have come up to you and just told you about their own personal friends, their own personal demons, and how
that's
the
a lot
character of
different.
Nancy.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that affect you as a person, just to know that a character that you've portrayed has helped people in such a profound way that they found strength to overcome adversity, to get over personal trials and tribulations, abuse? How does that feel?
The fan that comes to my mind is the one in I Am Nancy, who tells me about, and he's obviously, has PTSD pretty bad, and he says that, I said, what's your Freddy? And he said, when I had to watch my sergeant in, I think they were in Kosovo or someplace like that, get shot, and he had to, basically cradle his sergeant in his arms while he bled out, and he was like, that was my Freddy, and he didn't compare himself to Nancy at that moment, but he certainly did make the analogy to his Freddy, and that's kind of what I always ask him, what's your Freddy? Everyone has an answer for that, and I think that is the most fun and beautiful part of being at these conventions is when somebody can talk about those things in their life in this safe environment, and they don't feel like, you know, anything's going to happen to them, but they can reflect on the bad and scary things that happen to them in their life. Everybody has something that is like a Freddy thing. Okay.
Well,
What's your
Freddy?
Freddy?
Oh my God, there's so many.
I know.
There's one or two for each movie in the series.
Well, you know, before you guys were cast, were you aware of any of Wes's previous work?
No. I was a goody two-shoes. Never. Last House on the Left. Have you seen that movie?
I am. Yeah.
No, I didn't know who Wes Craven was.
No.
Never heard
How
of him.
did Wes? No.
He was very modest. He was kind of like, I don't think he was confident that those were his finest movies. They certainly were the beginning of his movie career. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's why he kept making movies. He had a vision of what he wanted to do. He just happened to start with those two. I mean, I'm thinking of Weiss.
Yeah.
And Last House on the Left.
He didn't ask us. I mean, we picked pretty young. I don't know.
We were too young to go legally to see those.
Yeah,
movies,
like I think,
you know?
I don't think he was looking for people that knew about him. I think he was just looking for like really like old small American people to play these parts, which, and you know, I just was never exposed to horror growing up, so I didn't know. I really, outside of like old Bella Lugosi movies or whatever that were on TV, I didn't watch them. I was like, whoa.
I mean, how would you even see Hills Have Eyes?
Yeah.
Or Last House on the Left in the 1982? It would have been really tough.
Yeah.
Because you would have had, there was no video stores. You know, there were no, I mean, I didn't know where you would even buy a
it wasn't
video.
like
I mean, we never had VCRs. So, I mean, you're relying on a very, you have to think that's like, you know, what you know now. There were no Blockbuster video stores.
No.
You know?
There was like, in my town, there was one movie theater, but it played like Billy Jack forever.
Exactly.
And then,
So when people saw Wes's movie, I'm like, how did you see it?
Yeah,
It was like, oh, it was on late night TV on some, you know, some station. But unless you were there at that moment, be sitting in front of the TV.
yeah.
These things were just like words you heard. Last House on the Left. I never had a way to see it, even if I wanted to.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, it's much more available now. Like, maybe people can show it to their kids, and they can sit in their own home and watch it with their kids and fast forward through parts they think are inappropriate for their kids or whatever it is. I don't know that movie, so I won't. Okay. Or don't show that to your
Last House on the Left to your
kids.
kids.
No, there's gonna be like an extra spike in it. Right.
Well, you know, you mentioned if a movie is good, it's going to last, and then 30 years later you're going to see it. Nightmare's there. How does that feel for you guys? That it's lasted this long?
Makes me feel really old.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm just like, whoa. I don't know. Yeah, it just makes me feel old and like, it's me. I don't know. The 30 years has just flown by. I think that makes me sad. There's my Freddy right there. It used to flown by. Age and time flying by so fast. It makes you, God, it's like 30 years have flown by that fast. It's like, we all have to pay attention and savor these moments
I
because
totally agree.
the next 30 is going to fly by.
I know, and that's, I mean, I have to say, like, one of the things that I really would emphasize is that we're not, like, this generation, so this incessant and constant entertainment that everybody's always talking about and being part of, you know, you have to realize that there's part of you that's not living your life when you're sitting in front of your TV, and I think that I'm more aware of it now that 30 years have gone by, and I think of all the things that, you know, maybe I wouldn't have been able to accomplish if that world existed when we were 20. I mean, I don't know if I could have had an acting career, knowing how much time it takes, knowing how much work you have to do, knowing how much time for college or whatever it is, if I had that constant distraction available to me. And I just wonder, I just think it's such a hard thing to, like when your favorite episode of your favorite show, like Breaking Bad or whatever it is on, and you're like, I've just got to watch it. You know, that's an hour that you're not going to be doing something else that might be really important. And the other thing that about conventions that we all come together to share something and justify something in our lives that we have to really think about. Like, is this the thing that I want to have tell my grandkids is that I went to 75 conventions in my life, and I got Freddie Krueger's autograph. Is that going to be enough? Is that good enough? And all of you guys are young and I'm old, and I love coming here, but I also sometimes feel like what Mandy said, 30 years goes by like that, and you don't have a second chance. And I don't know if going to conventions and being the #1 fan of Nightmare on Elm Street is actually going to be the thing that's going to make you feel really proud of your life. I mean, it sounds like a downer, but I actually kind of believe it. I mean, not that I don't want to see everybody next time, but
shoot yourself in the foot. It's okay.
But I love it when people come up to me and say, "I'm a writer, I'm an actor, I'm looking after doing this dream and that dream." Those are dreams, and our Nightmare on Elm Street isn't really a dream in and of itself. And I just want to remind people that there's all other kinds of dreams out there too.
That is very poetic. I really like that. Actually, let's open up to the audience. Who has a question? That person does. Go ahead.
When you guys got on the set for the original film, they have Robert Englund sequestered somewhere and in makeup, so he was a legitimate frightening experience, or did he kind of squirrel away and kind of get you
That's a
throughout
big
the course of the
question.
film?
He got his makeup done far away from us, though, and I don't know if they planned it that way, but I never really saw him in the morning.
I never saw him. I don't think I ever saw him without makeup until remember the time we went out to his beach house?
Yeah.
Was that after the movie? Was that during the movie?
I think it was after.
I don't think, because I was
She was always here, on the days when he was already in makeup.
yeah,
probably.
and I wasn't there that many days, really.
Yeah,
So I actually really hadn't. I mean, I'd seen him with pieces of it off, but I didn't actually. No, I mean, he got there way before.
Yeah, he
us
got
in the
here
morning.
2.5 hours before we were called, and he left an hour and a half after we left. So it was rare to ever see him without makeup. Except
But we used to
I
go
was seen
sit
him the
in-
first day during prep and wardrobe fitting. I saw him that day, so I got to see him with us.
But we used to go sit there and listen to his stories. Remember, we
Yeah.
would just sit there because he would just.
We would talk about
stories
he knew all the musicians, and he was dating Sam Shepard's sister at the time. They lived a really high flying kind of hip
They were so cool.
Hollywood
I was
life,
like-
and we were just like.
We were like, you're so cool.
Yeah.
And he would tell us all these Shakespearean stories and
Right.
about when he studied at Aida or Rada.
Rada.
And oh God, he just had a story for everything, and he was just so awesome. But I totally remember that sitting in the makeup room, and there were. This is how I remember it. It may not be true because I think after 30 years,
all true.
I know, after 30 years, I'm like, am I remembering this, or is this how I want to remember it? But I picture that there was little chairs behind him, and we sat there while he was doing his makeup, and I just remember we would just sit there because we didn't even wear any makeup really. I think they put some powder on us.
Yeah, we didn't wear.
So we were done. And he's awesome. He still tells great stories 30 years later, and I never tire of them.
It doesn't look like it's 30 years later. I'll say that.
Oh, you're
Aw,
it's the convention air conditioning.
Yeah.
It's like Twinkies and air conditioning.
And I think Pittsburgh, I have to say, every single person, God, and the people, every person that's walked up to my table, I'm like, oh my God, what do you drink here? Is it Jameson? Is that what it is?
No, it's the cane beer.
It's just amazing. Everybody has the most beautiful skin, and there was a young girl that came up and was pregnant, and I thought she was 12. And I was like, oh. And then she was 30, and I'm like, what? What the hey? You look amazing. You should just tell me everything you do for your skin right now.
Like you're about to call social services.
I know. And then every single woman, I'm like, oh my God, your skin. And nobody has wrinkles, and I'm like, what the heck? Everybody's happy.
LA is horrible.
It is. It's a soul-sucking city. It's just sucked my soul for over 30 years.
Do we have any other questions? Sir, go ahead.
Amanda, do you have any projects upcoming?
I do. I'm very excited. I'm going to do a web series called The Division. That's really good. It's kind of like the series 24. And I play the evil first lady. And my opening scene, I am introduced by slapping the crap out of someone because I don't like what they said. So that's going to be really fun. And then I'm supposed to start, and I'm hoping it comes through, a trilogy that's going to shoot in New Orleans, and it's a really cool horror trilogy. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. The offer's in, but I'm not 100% that the financing is on. So that would be cool. I play the mom to the hot girl. So, and it's out, it's all good. It's kind of voodoo-y, scary. So hopefully that comes through. But the division I start in January, so I'm super excited.
All right, who's next? Go for it.
This is for Amanda. This comment. Tony said close, here I am.
Ray, you look very handsome in that scene. I'm glad you got it.
It was pretty crowded when we got here, and I didn't know if it was
Beat somebody up.
No, it wasn't beating anybody up.
Any other questions? All right, go ahead, buddy.
Did anybody pull any pranks on the Nightmare on Elm Street set?
There were lots
If
of
they
pranks.
did,
I remember some
what did they do?
pranks. Well, Wes Craven wore a tie to work every day, and we thought that was kind of unusual, just because it's a horror movie, right? Like most people are usually very casual, and so we all decided one day to wear neckties to work, and so everybody wore a necktie. It was actually the silliest prank that we just got such a kick out of that, and there was other pranks. I don't know. Well, Robert was always doing. They were kind of pranky things. Like he would take one of the props that the prop master meant to be for this purpose, and he would always use it for other, like demonic purposes. He had one little rabbit bunny that was laying around somewhere. It was just a prop laying on the ground in Nightmare 3, and he just picked it up and he just started doing all these evil things with the little cute bunny. And so he just had all these kinds of he was just pranking all the time, actually. He never let us have one moment of seriousness on the set, actually. Robert was our comedian, and our Freddie all wrapped into one.
All right, we have time for one more question. Go for it. Any new, for those who couldn't hear, any new documentaries in the works on plans?
Crystal Lake Memories took 18 or 19 months to do, so I'm just gonna go to bed. I don't really know. It's not like I think about like ahead of time, like what do I really want to do? And I should probably put like a little suggestion box at my table,
that's a great
because
idea.
there's so many great ideas out there, but they don't always hit me. And I don't know. I'd love to hear what people want to see. I mean, I'm a fan. I mean, I make these things not because if these things were never made by me, they're the things I want to see as a fan. So I want to know what people want to see, because I would love to delve into those as well. I mean, some people have suggested like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I feel like there's so much that's been done on that already. I don't know what I could uncover. There's a couple things that I'm thinking about, but I don't want to say them just yet. So. But anyway, if anyone has an idea, come to my table and tell me. I really would love to hear what people really want to see and delve into. And I'd love to give great franchises or great standalone movies that treatment that tells you the ultimate story, because we love these movies and we wouldn't be here if we didn't.
On that, I do want to say thank you, and thank you to Tommy, Heather,